Hello, good morning and welcome to the maiden edition of the Aviator World. As the name implies, the show is about developments in the aviation industry in Nigeria and the rest of the world. This morning, the intention is to stimulate, discuss and keep the conversation going about the new aviation commercial policy and the progress being made to stimulate sustainable growth in the aviation sector. My name is Ohwevie Ubodaga. Well, we shall also focus on efforts at making the Nigerian aviation industry globally competitive. The role of government and industry operators in enforcing regulations that will curb wastages and plug loopholes in the system will also be discussed. With me in the studio is the Senior Special Advisor to the President on Aviation Reforms, Ms. Anne Eneita. Madam, you're welcome to the
Thank you
program.
very much.
Also with us this morning is Mr. George Uriesi. He is the Managing Director of the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria, FAN. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
But first, let us take a break at this point and bring you this report.
The aviation industry in Nigeria has seen its good days and has also experienced an unprecedented downturn in the past few decades of its over 70 years of existence since the first commercial flight landed in Kano in 1936.
The first airplane to land in this country landed in Kano. And today in the palace, His Highness the Emir of Kano went back into history and reminded us all that when the plane arrived, nobody wanted to enter it. It was his father that was the first to enter the plane.
Gone are the days of the oil boom of the 70s that saw the emergence of the Nigerian Airways, which used to be the envy of many countries across the continent of Africa and some Western nations.
National carrier is not just aircraft that our name is written on, but is an aircraft that represents us everywhere. Therefore, it must be professionally managed, it must be efficiently managed. Most importantly, it must have good return for investors. So we're doing it very, very carefully.
But as Nigeria evolved into a modern state, policies and regulations that would have taken the aviation sector to the next level were overlooked by one government after the other.
Can you recall how many presidents may have gone through this place? How many ministers, aviation ministers that may have gone through all our airports and they didn't do anything? It took a lady of substance and a lady of class and vision to put this together. Don't you like it? There are few airports in the world that can compete with every of our airports in this country.
It is easy for the common man to refer to the mixed fortune in the sector to the lame excuse of the Nigerian factor.
Past few years, there's been changes, and we're all seeing it, and we appreciate it, making us to kind of feel proud being in Nigeria. So we urge the government to continue in this direction.
If this system can be continued, I believe Nigeria is destined for greater heights, especially in the aviation sector.
But as the country progresses into the 22nd century, the need now arises for a comprehensive policy review that can make the country's aviation sector to compete globally.
There will not be growth of civil aviation. So what the civil aviation policy is the foundation itself, is the enabling environment, is the driver that drives the growth of civil aviation.
You must open your eyes and look properly. In the decades you have mentioned, have you not seen the transformation? Have you not seen the improvement? This policy change today is part of the transfer. It is this policy that will move aviation to the next level. It is this policy that will create what the aviation industry has always been coining the enabling environment, allowing people who want to function properly to function, and bringing fair play, giving people a direction, equitable direction that everybody knows, uniform rules for all parties.
Although efforts at giving the industry the desired lifeline seem to be on course, several issues such as a regulatory framework, safety, and security occupy the front burner.
The Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority is not just designated Category 1 because of the equipment we have. It is because of also the relevant manpower in reasonable number
to regulate and manage the industry. And the industry includes airport, airspace, meteorology, and regulation. So we have put all this together to produce for us in the airspace industry ATM, CNS ATM, communication, navigation, and surveillance.
Despite the issues, it is commendable that the executive and the legislature are on the same page in tackling the challenges with a view to giving Nigeria the aviation industry it deserves.
I want to commend this team, the management of FAN, the Minister of Aviation and her team for a work well done. And I want to say that if other sectors of our economy, they are working the way Minister of Aviation is working, we would have gotten to the promised land.
Nigerians earnestly hope that the new lease of life the aviation sector is now experiencing could be sustained by the administration of President Jonathan and the ones that will come after it.
You're welcome back. Now let's go straight to the matter of the moment. The first would be the presidential aid. Madam, what is this new aviation commercial policy all about?
Well, I will take you to let me give you a little bit of background information. The background information I want to give starting from the establishment of the International Civil Aviation Organization in 1944. The objective of that organization is to develop safe, secure, efficient, and regulating all the international civil aviation industry throughout the whole world. Nigeria is a signatory to this convention, and also they have established the standards and recommended practices for all international civil aviation industry throughout the world.
Okay.
So with this, I want to state that whatever we do here in Nigeria, we are keeping to the international standards as well as the best practices that is happening globally. So therefore, all our policies that we are making in Nigeria takes its root from the recommended standard and practices that is being done elsewhere in the world. We have the Nigerian Civil Aviation Act of 2006, which is undergoing review right now. We also developed the National Civil Aviation Policy of just this year, April this year. And as such, you can see that whatever that we are doing here in Nigeria take its roots from what is happening internationally. And as such, we are not standing alone.
Okay. That's a background. Now, tell us about this policy itself as it applies to Nigeria, the commercial aviation policy.
The commercial aviation policy specifically deals with doing business. Have given you the background of what it is.
Yeah.
Regulating the businesses that is happening in all the aviation sector. That's what it is. And government has to regulate it in line also, as I have stated, with the standards and recommended practices of ICAO. And that is precisely what we have done in the aviation industry.
Now, would you say this is commercialization or is it privatization? I'm just curious.
No, it is commercialization. It is business. We are doing business first.
Now,
when we are doing that, at the same time, government is involved, the private sector is involved.
Okay.
And as such, government, the private sector, we are all working together to have a safe, secure aviation sector in Nigeria.
Okay. Let me turn to you, Mr. Riasi. How sustainable do you see this policy?
Well, that's what the policy is all about. It's about establishing a framework for anyone who wants to do business in this industry to be successful.
Yes.
What this policy has taken us from a largely unclear operating environment in the non-scheduled commercial aviation environment into a more clear operating ground where rules are set that allow you, if you want to invest in a charter operation, that create an enabling environment for you in the sense that you have clarity on what you need to do, what needs to be done for you, and establishing this, what we call in the industry, the user pays principle. That the service providers that assist you to operate, that is some of them are government agencies, that they need to recover the amount of money that they spend in providing the service for you to operate. At the same time, it sets market access principles for you. It sets how you can operate whatever aircraft you're using, if it's registered in Nigeria or if it's registered internationally. All those things were very unclear previously, and we had a growing non-scheduled commercial environment that was growing without clear rules. And I must say that this is a stage that most countries in the world pass through. For a while, they start to develop their non-scheduled means not non-airline operating environment, and it burgeons, and sometimes the people establish their rules as they go along. We were getting to that stage in Nigeria where people would bring in foreign aircraft and use them permanently to do charters within the country. It seemed as if that area was not being regulated. Now what has happened is that all that has been brought into the regulatory environment. Clarity has been established about what you can do and what you can't do. The aim is to protect Nigerian indigenous investors in the industry. The aim is to increase the Nigerian aircraft registry, or to create advantages for people who register their aircraft in Nigeria versus people who use foreign registered aircraft over a long period of time. So that in the long run, there's a very established platform for doing aviation commercial business in Nigeria that's sustainable for the investor, that's sustainable for the government service providers at the same time.
Okay, I'm just curious here now. If you're pushing a commercial policy and an aviation policy that has a commercial thrust, that means you must have targets. In the pursuit of targets, isn't it possible that we lose sight, for instance, of why we're in that sector in the first place? Safety and all the other related things?
Oh, no. Actually, what has happened is that we have been very focused on safety for a very long time. And we did actually take our eyes off the commercial aspect.
Okay.
And we're focused on safety. But in the world, the two of them come hand in hand. There's the safety side and there's the commercial side, the economic regulatory side. Now, the two go hand in hand, because if you're focused on safety and you're not focused on the economic regulations, the economics of any aviation operation affects its safety at the end of the day. If it is not thriving, if you have an airline that is unable to pay salaries, is unable to doesn't have the cash flow to take care of its assets and create a safe environment for its operations, it cannot be safe. So if it continues to meet all your safety requirements, yet it doesn't have the money to sustain them, it's essentially unsafe. So we have now extended that regulatory oversight to the economic aspect. So one is to meet the safety standards as they are set. The second is to meet what we expect to be standards that allow us to know that you are sustainable in your business, that you pay your bills, you pay your salaries, you actually maintain your aircraft. Because if you're not paying your salaries, we begin to doubt if you have the ability to maintain your aircraft as you're supposed to.
Okay.
So those two come together.
Okay, spin off from that now. Do you have the relevant manpower to actualize this commercial policy? Do you have adequate manpower to do so?
If anything, one of the problems that has been an issue in the industry is a glut of manpower, especially in the pilot area. Maybe not in the engineering, but in the pilot area. Okay. The complaint has been that Nigerian qualified pilots, many of them are unable to get jobs, partly because foreign aircraft are brought into the country and stay for a very long time, being flown by foreigners when we have qualified pilots. Yes, those aeroplanes. So this is trying to address that on the one hand. On the second hand, I am not very sure about the status of engineering in the industry and whether we have a shortage or not. But what we do have right now is that we have a civil aviation authority that's capable of carrying out its regulatory requirement. Okay. And so in that sense, I think we're in order.
Let me come back to you, Madam. What is the role of government and operators in this regard, in this policy thrust?
Well, the role of government is very clear. Government sets the policy, sets the rules, sets the standard, and in particular sets the regulation, which is being done by the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority. They are the regulatory body, and also they enforce. The enforcement falls solely on their shoulders. And I want to state that they are very capable. They are working very hard. We are training the staff to ensure that all regulations that are being emanated from government are being implemented.
Okay. Are there any things you think would be a drawback, maybe mitigate against the execution of this policy, the implementation of the policy?
Well, we are working around in all these the sectors to ensure that all the agencies would do their very best. We are trying to put in place the adequate infrastructure to ensure that the implementation of these regulations are made. We are training the staff, regular training, train and retrain.
Okay.
We're training them here in Nigeria. We have a school in aviation college in aviation in Zaria, where they are also training some of these staff, and we send them also abroad. You know, aviation business is more or less an international business, so they are being trained all over the world. And I want to say that we are coming up in that. Hitherto, we did not do all this. I think that is why we're having the hue and cry that we are having now with respect to this commercial policy. As the MD of FAN has said, especially in the general aviation, nothing was being done at all there. One, there was no law and order as far as the general aviation was concerned. Now that the regulations have been put in place, they are not used to. I mean, for instance, you have to draw up a manifest before a plane takes off, before a charter plane takes off.
Are you saying these were not in place in the first place all these years?
It's only normal that you have to put up a manifest so that if anything happens, we should be able to know who are in that aircraft. And now they have to pay the required charges. So that is why we are having the problem now. We are introducing a new system.
Okay.
But it takes a while, a change. You know, this present administration, we are in for transformation. Mr. President, transformation agenda. Aviation is really one of the key sectors that is in the forefront of it. And people resist change.
Okay,
so I think with time, they will all be able to imbibe into it.
Let me play the devil's advocate here for a moment. These changes you intend to put in place, the whole idea, the policy, the commercialization or commercial policy of the aviation sector, are you not going to be passing on the costs of all of this to the ordinary man on the street, the consumer?
Well, definitely at the end of the day, we are trying to make sure that, you see, before we come up with any policy, especially the commercial policy, we have to take into consideration the airline operator, the impact on the airline operator. We balance it, we try to balance that with the passengers, the impact on the passenger. At the end of the day, we have to make sure that we have a balanced situation where the providers within the airport, the airline operators, and the passengers, we have to balance it all out. We have to move forward in the aviation sector.
I agree. I agree. Before I take on the next question, Mr. Resi, spinning off from what the presidential aide has said, I'm just curious. You have different charges as NCA. You're a regulator of the industry, one of the major, not NCA, you're FAN. Yes. There are charges that are passed on to, that the airline operators, for instance, bear, which we know are usually passed on to passengers. This whole commercial policy, won't it still, I feel I should put this, would it still move, wouldn't it affect the common man on the street?
There's a lot of ignorance really about the impact and the effects of this
educate us,
policy.
please.
Let me educate you. There's nothing we're doing that's different from what you find in the Republic of Benin, Ghana, the United States, Canada, Argentina, Australia, New Zealand, Russia. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Everywhere in the world, airlines pay exactly the same charges. A landing fee, a parking fee, an overflight charge for air traffic control services. It's standard globally. And there is a policy from the International Civil Aviation Organization that sets how you set those charges. So the charges are not different in Nigeria than they are elsewhere. So if you had an airline in Nigeria, or you had an airline in South Africa, you had an airline in Uganda, you would pay landing fees, you would pay parking fees, you would pay overflight charges.
Okay.
It's exactly the same thing. Now, when people say that the government agencies like FAN and NAMA and the NCA are charging the local airlines out of existence, I can tell you categorically that is totally untrue. The total sum of charges of the agencies to the local airlines and to any airlines in the world is a maximum of 5% of their cost base.
Okay.
It is not the real cost that causes them either to survive or not to survive. If you took away our charges completely, it would make absolutely no difference to them. And let me add that over the years, the major subsidizer of domestic airlines in Nigeria has been the government through its agencies. You know why I say so? Yes. Because they have established a principle over the years of not paying these bills. So in essence, they're actually flying, hardly paying the bills to the agencies.
They're doing business at no cost at all.
So what we're trying to do now is to say it is unsustainable. The government cannot continue to support its agencies to provide services to people who are supposed to pay and don't pay.
Okay.
Any of our airlines who fly abroad, if you don't pay your parking or your landing fee, you can't even depart out of that airport. But in Nigeria, they just take advantage of the way the government has been
I want
postured.
to say that on that note, we could say that the whole policy, the aviation commercial policy, is actually meant for all of us here. Government, the people of this country. I will say thank you. Well, that's about how much we can take on the program. And this is where we draw the curtain on this edition of the program. We have been joined this morning by the Senior Special Advisor to the President on Aviation Reforms, Ms. Ann Enaita. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
And also we have had the Managing Director of the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria, Mr. George Uriesi. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Well, I want to believe that it's been a wonderful time with our guests in the studio. You can keep a date with us on the Aviator World every Saturday morning, where we shall continue to bring to you operators, policymakers, and anyone that has a stake in the industry. On behalf of my producers, program directors, and all those who made it possible for us to reach you this morning, I am Okwivia Ubudaga, to have a fantastic flying experience. Good morning.